Well, and hello and welcome to the Church Office. My name is Gavin Smith and I'm the founder of the Church Office. And this video is a short video to tell you a little bit more about the back office reviews. And I've got Andy Laws from the Slade Church in London. Mate, thanks for coming on and chatting about this.
Oh, you're welcome, Gav. It's always good to see your face.
That's
Yeah.
funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
some wouldn't say that. So got the face for radio, maybe that's the best way of describing it. But yeah, we wanted to chat a little bit
Yeah.
about Andy's experience, a little bit about the back office reviews. This is one of the kind of really busy areas of ministry, and I think as we
Mm,
film this, we've got about 12 churches on a waiting list waiting to do a back office review.
yeah.
And people are saying to me, well, what is it and why is it so popular and
Yeah.
how beneficial is it? And so I met Graham, who's one of your trustees of the church.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah.
He's been in the church for a long time. We met him at
Yeah.
an FIC conference and he was sort of lingering around my stand. And I think it was kind of like he was thinking, yes, I know we need help with admin and ops,
Mm,
but I don't really know what kind of help we needed.
yeah.
And then we sparked a conversation and it went from there.
Mm.
Andy, when you heard about back office review, what were you thinking and how did Graham sort of come back and talk about it after the conference? I'd be interested in that.
Yeah. So we were kind of, I'll share a bit about our context because I think that helps why Graham was hanging around your stall. So we kind of had lots of different kind of deacons and stuff helping with kind of bits of admin over
Yeah,
time. But we had come to a place, I think, where we had some really faithful people in our church office
yeah,
who were working really hard, but doing a kind of they were great at doing anything we kind of put their way, but in terms of proactivity,
yeah,
we were kind of driving that from the kind of eldership and leadership, which it is fine, but we just kept finding there was a gap there, and we had already sort of done our own sort of operations review, which Graham's kind of background in the corporate world for BT. So he
yeah,
was really helpful for that. But we kept finding, yeah, that there was just this kind of like gap of policies that hadn't been updated and were not all there.
yeah,
There was a kind of gap in terms of proactive planning, and people were very willing to be involved volunteer wise.
yeah,
But it was very much kind of like, can you do this really specific job and then this really specific job? And it's like, in terms of teams and stuff like that, there was a bit of kind of lacking.
yeah,
Um, so I think that's why the Graham was there, and he kind of came back and said, "Look, we were already doing this operations review, and I've met Gavin, and it sounds like he kind of can help us put a bit of structure around that,
yeah,
to really help us kind of move forward."
yeah. Ah, that's helpful. Yeah, the context is helpful. And Graham really clearly had some gifted in this, but actually having an outside perspective come in and say, okay,
Yeah.
where are we at? You know, almost kind of benchmarking and saying, well, actually, you've got
Mm,
15 policies, 12 of them are great, three of them need work on. You know, here's some suggestions, here's some templates, here's where you can go and get some help. And yeah, and somebody coming in and just being able to kind of dig around and ask the questions. And if you've come across anything that we've done with the church office, we have a kind of a model that we use, kind of vision gap delivery. And you were talking about that gap, Andy, and that's where churches often find it. How do we move really what that we feel God's called us to do
yeah.
into action, into kind of implementation and delivery?
Mm,
And we've kind of created sort of 8 bridges that say, right, well, these are 8 helpful things that will help you move vision to delivery. And so the review kind of spends a little bit of time talking about that. And mate, your review really stands out because you were the first person that I interviewed. And you came alive as I shared the kind of model, vision gap delivery. I've never had somebody come alive so quickly and so like, oh my goodness, this is what we've been missing. This is what we need. And you saw it straight away, didn't you?
Yeah. I think, yeah, you kind of coming in and spelling out a kind of, I guess, a little bit of, we kind of had discussions around that being a gap. And some of your listeners might have had that kind of email from the Charity Commission,
Yeah.
which kind of highlights it in a whole nother level of, have you got these policies? And some of
Yeah.
them are like, hopefully you have got in place, and some of them you're like, oh, okay.
Oh no.
Some are like you look back and were updated in 1996 or
Yeah.
whatever else. And I guess things like that highlight the gap. And also, I remember one question you kind of put to me, and you were like something like, how do you think the church members feel engaged with the kind of vision and mission of the church?
Yeah.
And do you think they feel like they're really part of that? And I said, well, I think maybe, yeah, they kind of not too bothered. And that was clearly the wrong. And you just like what you said really hit me like a bolt of lightning. It's just like, I think probably they're quite frustrated.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes. And kind of since then, that just really highlighted just part of that gap of
Yeah.
we've got this vision as a leadership, which we think we're communicating, but we're kind of communicating on a message level, not on a practice level.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think that's part of the real gap that we
Yeah.
had.
And that's a really helpful way, yeah, describing it. And I think you were kind of, I got the impression from Graham that, you'd had a lot of voluntary help, like you said before, of people who would step into roles for a little short, burst of help. But actually you were guys were getting to a size and you were kind of rapidly growing where
Mm.
you've just done out your main hall and you were already full. You were into an overflow
Yeah,
and you're in London where it's not easy with buildings, and you're thinking, right, what do we do
yeah,
now? And
yeah,
actually, you were growing to a size that actually you just needed some more dedicated time in kind of managing that gap.
yes,
Essentially, is what we were saying. And
yeah.
I think when I spoke to you, I said to the trustees and to my wife Emma when I got back, I was like, the review was finished after my conversation with Andy because it was just like it was like God had just sort of opened up the conversation with you, and I was like, this is the guy. This is the guy to lead this and to manage this. You were doing the kind of kids ministry and overseeing
Yeah,
that kind of work, weren't you,
yeah,
as an elder?
yeah.
And you were doing a fantastic job. And we just saw this life in your teams, in the ministry, in the stuff that you were doing on the website. It
Mm,
was well organized, it was well coordinated. And I'm just sat there thinking, this is the guy. This is the guy who could really step in. And if the church would recognize this role as like an
mm.
operations manager, what a difference it could make. And that's really been part of the story, isn't it? Really, like how did you respond to that when we're thinking, all right, Andy's the guy?
So I got called to like one of these like secret meetings you have in church. We're going for a coffee, my pastor Wes says. Okay. And we turned up at another elder's house. It was a helpful chat, and they were just like, "Yeah, we wanted to send you this report, but we wanted to talk to you about it first because Gav's got this kind of new role." Um,
Kevin's got this crazy recommendation.
well, that's the funny thing. To them, it didn't sound crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
So for them, they had chatted to their wives as well, and they were like, "Yes, this kind of makes sense. We
yeah,
definitely need someone in this role, and like to appoint kind of internally someone who really
yes,
knows these bits of the church and maybe has had a little bit of a go at it within one section of the church,
yeah,
might be able to." And I remember you talking about this in a follow-up kind of conversation, expand what I've been doing in kids and youth
yeah,
kind of across the church in terms of teams and people and investment.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Mate, and yeah, it's you were absolutely you responded to it. I think the team kind of went, oh golly, yeah, that seems like a really good recommendation. And you're probably what, a year into the role now, maybe shy of that.
Uh, yeah, just a bit shy of it. So I started kind of officially in September, and I
Yeah,
told everyone it's kind of like I'm just kind of blagging it, if you like. I feel like it's
yeah,
something I'm going to grow into.
yeah,
and yeah, it's been, I think the biggest joy has been talking to people we're trying to raise up as leaders of teams
Yeah,
and seeing them kind of answer that question that you asked in that interview of, oh, I see my bit
yeah,
in what we're doing here. I can
yeah,
and just like seeing people see, oh, this gifting and capability that God has
yeah,
put in me, I'm able to leverage it like for the church.
yeah,
And there's just a real joy in like really empowering people to see, yeah, this is my bit, and I can
yeah,
pull these people together and help them to see their thing. And yeah, I remember just sitting, I had a conversation with someone who's running our kind of data protection stuff and thinking through that. And she does that for work. And
yeah.
she's just like, this is so exciting for me to be chatting to you about this for church.
Oh, wow.
I've always loved to serve the church, but to serve it in this way
Yeah,
is
yeah.
like where I feel like, yeah, this is my gifting really coming alive here.
Oh, there's something quite special about that, isn't there? There's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just people seeing people come alive
Yes.
with their contribution to that mission and that vision, and
Mm.
I can play a part here. Yeah, and that sense of, yeah, God's called me to this. I've got a grace to do this, and you then empower them and release them to do it and encourage them. Man, what a
It's
joy this job
so
is! Like,
exciting.
what a blessing it is to do it.
Yeah.
Um, So in terms of the process for those, kind of listening into to this and thinking, right, do I want a back office review? Should our
Yeah.
church have one?
Yeah.
We there's kind of three sort of stages, I guess, to it. The first one was kind of we ask you to provide all your policy and procedure. We want to look at your budgets. We want to look at your staffing structures, your roles, your job descriptions, anything that you have already. We kind of have a look at,
Mm.
and it's great to kind of again filter that through. We want to understand really what the church is seeking to do. What are you guys trying to do
Yeah.
as a local church? What's your vision and mission? What has God called you to do? And then everything flows from that. So your policy does, your roles do, your budgets, and we often talk in our training and our review, how do you align all of those, that as I look at your finances, we
Mm.
can see, oh, these guys are passionate about this. This is what their
Yeah.
priority is. And we began to start to see that. And so that's the first kind of part of the review, as we look at all your paperwork, we look at your structures, we look at what you've got
Mm.
existing. And then we come on site then and sort of spend a day or 2 days with you,
Yeah.
depending on the budget, depending on how in depth you want. We'll look at the building, and then we interview sort of all the elders, all the deacons, all the team leaders, all the staff that you have, and we're just trying to gather as much information as we can that might be able to kind of hold up a mirror and say, this is what we see. Here's some recommendations that you might want to consider. How did people sort of respond to that, Andy, being interviewed and being, having someone come on site? I'm like Estin on site, for churches. How did that go?
So I think, yeah, going into it, some people were excited, some people were nervous.
Yeah,
It's just like, I think, yeah, the misconception can be that you think you're under review,
yeah,
as in your position.
yeah,
And what people found having done it was, oh, it's just really helpful
yeah,
to see. One great thing you did was pull up, these are the strengths going on here
yeah, yeah,
and the wonderful things. And another thing that was so helpful was it's very easy in church life, I think, to get into your own little bubble, and you can kind of see bits of other churches' output,
yeah,
but not how they kind of run. And so often you can have kind of blind spots
yeah,
that sometimes you need someone to come in from the outside and say, if you realize you're doing this, but you want to do this.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and so just having that kind of outside thinking can really help. Definitely really helped us.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah, that is useful, isn't it? Yeah, people have said that to me before. Yeah, just an outside perspective, and those blind spots or those things that we've always done and we've
yes.
always worked this way and
Yeah,
we've never changed it. We've never even asked the question like, why do we do this?
that's the thing. Yeah.
And that does just helpful. So So kind of, yeah, stage one is paperwork. Stage two is really come on site, spend some time with
Mm,
people. I absolutely love that part of it. You know, spending time with people, hearing their stories, hearing how they
yeah.
work together, hearing how they play a part in the vision, thinking about, yeah, their work is remarkable. And then we kind of finish up the kind of stage three is kind of we write a report for you, and try and put something down on paper that says, like you said, right, here's the good stuff that we're seeing, because we don't want to just come and say, well, this is all the bad stuff, this is all the stuff you need to do. We want to come in and say, actually, we know every church there's grace on it, and there's great stuff that's happening, and we know every church there are challenges.
Yeah.
There's the good and there's the bad and there's the ugly, and you see all of that. um but yeah, to start with, like, here's grace at work. People are surprised by that because you
Yeah.
don't stop and think about that for yourself.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think that's the thing is like in Christian ministry, it's like you say, it can be hard to have an idea of like sometimes because you're so kind of busy and at it, you're like constantly thinking, "Wow, what's next?"
Yeah,
Rather than reflecting and saying, "Well, what has God been doing here,
yeah,
and
yeah,
how?" Like in specifics, but also in just general. Like we
yeah,
obviously we celebrate people getting saved and stuff like that, but there's more general things that God can be using growing His kingdom through
yeah,
your people that you might not always kind of spot.
yeah. That's right. It is true. And then we try then to give some recommendations, and I think that's as strong as we go. You know, we come on site for 2 days. We spent a day or so looking at your paperwork.
Yeah.
So what we can see is limited, but what
Mm.
we can see, we offer, and we say, well, okay, well, we noticed this. You
Yeah.
might want to consider spending some time thinking about that. Or we noticed your budgets were not, aligning with your vision. Have you guys thought through that? And here's an
Mm.
exercise you might want to consider. Um, and often people find the reports helpful because you've got to kind of take away, you can't take everything all in on a kind of feedback session. We often do a feedback session on Zoom with elders, and they get the chance to kind of ask questions. Say, well, why did you say that? And can you give me a bit more information?
Mm.
Um, so the report gives you something you can go away with and work on. And
Yeah.
for some of these reports, it could take you 2 or 3 years to put into place. And we were chatting a bit about that this morning, weren't we,
Yeah.
off camera, saying, well, how are you getting on? And and what sort of pace have you been able
Yeah.
to come from the report? And each church is different in that, isn't it?
Yeah. I think, yeah, the report kind of did two things which we found really helpful is one, it kind of summarized and articulated things that we had already been chatting about, but over the course of several different meetings, which can
Yeah.
sometimes get lost
Yeah.
in the kind of everyday of things. So that was so helpful to us. And then yeah, these key recommendations and yeah, like I say, some spots that we kind of missed and also, kind of we talked about earlier about that kind of gap thing. In our church, we had some people who had served really faithfully,
Mm.
but had become a little bit of kind of a gatekeepery role.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just really helpful for us all to see that and
Yeah.
say, well, how can we work on that and move that forward so we can empower more people in the
Yeah.
church? So it's not just kind of funneled to free those guys up
Yeah.
to be able to serve in different ways as well, because it
Yeah.
was kind of tying them down as well as a kind of blocking some other people from being able to fulfill.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the key things that we do find as we use our model and we get churches to kind of protect their church onto it,
Mm.
you're talking about the kind of gatekeeper, and there are different characters and different people in churches where, you could have a treasurer who, all the decisions flow through them, and
Mm.
they control so much because they're the yes or no on the spend.
Yeah.
And some people in church organizations can find that quite challenging, and also the treasurer can feel quite lonely in that as well. And so you're just trying to reflect back and say, well, actually, is there a better way of doing this? Is there a different way of doing this that would serve you? And then we
Mm.
find elders who often spend a lot of their time in the gap or in delivery, and they're not doing what God's called them to do,
Yeah.
to go and shepherd the people and, teach and care for the people. And so they get distracted with things. So
Yeah.
the joy is pointing out to churches and saying, we want to make our elders really effective in the gospel and what
Mm,
the ministry that God's called them. So what could we change in our structure and organization that would help that to flourish more?
mm,
And so we don't have these guys thinking about that. And I know you're beginning to kind of transition and take over some of the stuff from Graham as well, haven't you?
yeah,
Who's been in the church for 30, 40 years probably.
yeah,
And he's been such a blessing managing so
massive.
much of the work
Yeah,
behind the scenes. And you're like, okay, part of your journey now is how do we pass that on? How do we
yeah,
make this sustainable for the future? How do we take all the
yeah,
knowledge in your head and start to put it into kind of, on paper or with other people doing stuff? Um, so it isn't, it brings up more questions, doesn't it, the review than it kind of, we thought, oh, great, this will tell us everything we need. But it also, with that, yeah, it gives us some clarity of things, practical things we can do straight away,
yeah,
but also some time to go, have you thought about this in a different way?
yeah,
And a question you and I are often having is, what's the leadership you need in the gap?
yeah,
Like, that's the question we're constantly asking. What
yeah.
leadership is in that gap, and how can we improve that? So, mate, that's great. Any other final thoughts on this?
No, I'd just say about that, just about people being isolated in roles. And I think I found that a joy, and I know like Graham's found that a joy is kind of meeting up and it not being a lonely role
Yeah,
anymore when you
yeah,
felt like the weight was on you.
yeah, yeah,
Now there's a joy in being able to discuss and bounce around those things
yeah,
that you thought kind of rested on you.
yeah,
So it's been thrilling. He's kind of come alive in that as well, and I
yeah,
guess that can be part of the joy going forward for people is yeah, you don't have to feel alone in those things.
yeah,
Being part of a team is like exciting.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, really helpful point, mate. And you've, as kind of on the follow up from the review, you came down to Christchurch and my church and spent a day with us, and mate, our team absolutely loved having you. They did. What a joy. They still talk about you now, and then you've also signed up for the kind of Good Church Management course, which is
Mm.
kind of an online course. Give us a couple of things that you did on that follow up and what you've got out of those two things so far.
Yeah, as Gav has told the story within their church, but I've been telling this story. Just the great thing about going to see, I guess, a model that you are kind of growing into in action is
Yeah,
that you can see what it looks like in practice.
yeah,
And so that was just a real blessing because it was a new role for me to come and see you and how you function alongside the elders and what kind of role that is and how you then work with teams of people within the church.
yeah,
And I think the most exciting thing for me was seeing how you can leverage that to really grow into areas. Like I think what I enjoyed seeing in your church down in Christchurch was just the generosity that you were
yeah,
able to leverage. And there's a back part of that. I think you've got this setup where you guys tap into some kind of nationwide fund in order to be
yeah,
locally generous.
yeah,
And there's an admin section involved in that you're kind of managing,
yeah,
but it frees people up
yeah,
to
yeah,
share the kingdom in different ways. And so just seeing those things come
yeah,
together
yeah,
enables you to be generous as a church. And that to me, things like that were really exciting to see
yeah,
how this puzzle comes together
yeah, yeah,
um, for the gospel. So that was coming down was just a thrill and a joy, and just to see you guys be so generous of your time and access. And then I think the course has been really helpful to put a kind of structure around. Okay, I know bits and pieces, but kind of like to actually think through like what's first, what's next,
yeah,
and to kind of flesh that out a little bit from the bare bones.
yeah, yeah. That's great. And sort of our model for the good church management really expands this kind of vision gap delivery
Yeah.
and the 8 bridges that we talk about where we spend most of our time, building bridges and rebuilding them and making them better, whether that be, policy and procedure roles, whether that be finances, thinking about the leadership we need in the gap, all of that stuff we're trying to bring into and say, right, actually, is there a course an online course that people can access, do in their own time, with a follow-up with a coaching session and an opportunity to kind of chat some stuff through. I think at the minute we've got something like 38 learners on the course, which is amazing. And so if you'd like to find out more about that, please check out the section on the website talking about the Good Church Management course. And if you'd like to find out more about a review, if you'd like to explore what that looks like, then please do reach out to us at info@thechurchoffice.co.uk. We'd love to have a conversation with you about the review. Andy, thanks for sharing about your story and a bit about kind of, how it went with the Slade Church. And I, if we had Graham on as well, it would be great, wouldn't it? I loved Graham. He stood up in an FIC conference when I was doing a seminar on governance. Do you remember this?
Yes.
He basically took over the seminar and said, "Isn't the church office wonderful? And this review was wonderful." And I was like, "Oh, yeah. Graham, what a top guy." So thank you so much for almost trusting us to come in and do it. And it's a big deal.
No, joy. Yeah.
So there we are. A little bit more about a back office review. Get in touch if you'd like to do that. Andy, thanks for coming on, mate, and chatting to us. And we're looking forward to kind of getting you on the podcast at some point. And thrown in the deep end. What do you do?
Yeah, great.
So great to see you. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.